Hello, David.
Hello, Fearne. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Did your kids go back to school today?
My youngest went back to school, and my eldest is off to university soon. Which is very bizarre. Once just didn't seem like yesterday that I was swaddling her in my arms, and now she's off to university. So it's strange feeling.
Yeah, my husband's going through the same with his eldest, who is going to his second year of uni, and that feeling of like you just said, how's time gone so quickly? But also is that okay that he's just going off as a man doing his own thing? He's finding that very strange.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, just the other day, because I've been away for like nearly 10 years, in the States, doing stuff. So I've come back, and suddenly my little girls, one's off to university, and my 16-year-old she went into town the other day, and it was like, she's what? She's in the West End. I'm like, should I go and find her? Should I be sniping from the, So it was very bizarre to suddenly find that, these kids have grown up,
I know. So let's talk about you being back here in Blighty, because you've been extremely busy, and I'm sure in an unexpected way, because none of us saw what was on the horizon, and the lockdown has meant different things for everybody. But for you, it's been a time of real self-exploration, not for the first time, but certainly a deeper dive into your own life and your backstory, and some subjects that are deeply meaningful to you. And this amazing book is born from that time period. Maybe I Don't Belong Here, which is a beautifully powerful, impactful book, and at times so fun. Like the escapism for me, I really needed some escapism whilst reading this book, with my kids being off school and it being so intense at home, and the moments when you were talking about Vanessa Redgrave and Verona and A Starry Sky. I was there, David. So thank you for all of it. So look, let's talk about this. Did it feel like a deeper dive? Because obviously, as I mentioned, your award-winning documentary has already covered your backstory, but this felt like you were maybe peeling back a few more layers to look at some stuff that you perhaps weren't ready to last time.
Wasn't that I wasn't ready for them ready to. It was that I didn't realize they were there. I mean, the documentary was a shock to me. I've got to be honest with you, I did it because I thought it might be fun, which is bizarre, because I know I did some very silly manic things, but when you're experiencing psychosis, I think like with bipolar, it is preceded by this manic period where you're quite high, and you think this is fun. If I can control this, this is gonna be great. So, and I think because I'm an actor and a creative, I was kind of buzzing for months, and probably suffering from my psychosis for months. So there were lots of sort of funny things that I did, walking around town, singing to complete strangers, carrying old ladies' handbags or shopping bags, and just making people laugh in general. So I thought I was going to discover all of that, and it was a real shock to me to discover just how ill I was. And in the documentary, when I get back to the hospital with my two friends, I was really stunned and scared when I suddenly realized, actually, I was running around this hospital screaming, and had 6 policemen sitting on top of me. That's when it suddenly hit me. Man, I was really out of it. So for the rest of the documentary, I was just terrified, because I didn't know what else I was going to find. And I think a couple of days later, I think that same day, I was given my medical records from 30 years ago, which was extraordinary, that they actually had my medical records on file. And there was a scene later in that day where I was supposed to open the envelope and read some of it and sort of discuss it with my mates. And the first thing I saw it just terrified me. And I closed the envelope and I said, I'm not reading this. Let's stop filming. And we stopped filming for the day, and I was really, really shaking, because it really reminded me of the sort of mental angst that I was going through. The first thing I saw, as I said, really, really kind of, it was like a stake through my heart. And so lockdown, pandemic happened, lockdown came, and I started writing a few things down. I started writing the book, but it wasn't until I got back to Vancouver and opened that same envelope. And throughout my quarantine in Vancouver, where I was filming, 14 days of doing nothing, I read the entire contents of that envelope. And it's sort of, once I'd sat with my darkest moment, once I'd sat with those fears, sat with those insecurities, that's when it all just, I suddenly thought, no, Jesus, this is deep. And it was all about race and my confusion around race and my confusion around identity, all sprang up. And that's what spurred the heart of the book, really. And then I suddenly realized, of course, my dad had a breakdown, and I never even mentioned that in my documentary. I didn't have time to, because I was reeling so much. But the book then became a bit of a love letter to my dad, to sort of understand what happened to us. And yeah, that's where the sort of book kind of came from.
Because your psychosis was shortly after your time at RADA, which in the book reads as a really beautiful time in your life, where you made this amazing group of friends and you were thriving, doing something that you creatively adored, and you had this direction in life that you were really feeling for the first time. But also it seemed like in the book it acted as a bit of a shield to the reality of what you were about to experience, and of course what you had experienced previously, but perhaps hadn't processed at the time.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think you know, the confusion around race and I hated what racism, how it makes you feel. It makes you, you know, as a kid, I was terrified. I mean, I know that's probably not a cool thing to say, but I was terrified. Whenever you're walking home from school and somebody would shout, "Nigger, coon," you know, out of a car or something like that, and it would just make me just tense. And I think I found clowning and make-believe and my imagination at school, because I could disappear in that. I could be anybody. And it was a nice environment surrounded by lovely, creative people. And I think that then extended, as you say, into drama school, where nobody mentioned my color, you know, and I could play King Lear and not, you know, nobody said, "Oh, he's black and she's white." And, you know, nobody mentioned it. And so I kind of escaped into this world of sort of bliss, where I'm studying, and you know, I was never that academic at school, but suddenly I'm studying Shakespeare, literature, and poetry, and I was just, my mind was going, wow, this is fantastic, and I was just buzzing and learning, and it was, you know, and I was finding that I was having some success and at drama school with playing these characters and just escaping into these writers' imaginations. It was just a beautiful time for me. But then, yeah, I came out of drama school and suddenly the world said to me, "Hang on, you're black. You don't do this, you do that. And you can't play that, you play this." And that's when that confusion returned. And that sort of difficulty to navigate the white space and racism, and to navigate how I fit into that, returned with a vengeance. And along with several other moments, it all combined to sort of tip me over the edge.
And this led to a feeling of you splitting in two. Can you talk to me more about this? You know, this sort of, obviously the anchor was you feeling that you didn't belong, but you sort of split into two, which perhaps induced this period of psychosis. Well,
I split into two years before. Like I say, you know, in the book, it's that was the first moment of racist abuse, when I was 7, and the old white man, I was playing outside my house. And up until that moment, I really hadn't had sort of direct, as I said, that, you know, people had shouted stuff at me and whatever, but you know, I sort of grew up, as I say in the book, watching the telly, you know, and I used to love watching the telly with my parents and seeing Dick Emery and Morecambe and Wise and all the Christmas specials. All those real, you know, dancing with newsreaders and all that stuff. It was all so magical and innocent. And I thought, yeah, I love this. I felt like a little English boy. And then this old man, basically, I saw him walking towards me, and he sort of leaned in and said, get out of my country, you little black bastard. And it was such a shock to me at the time, because I didn't understand what he meant, get out of his country. And my little mind was turning, the wheels were turning in my head. And that's when I thought, maybe I don't belong here. That's when that split happened, when I suddenly thought, and then people telling me to go home or go back to where I came from, it just, it sort of just unnerved me as a kid. And it would always just sit there in my head. What does that mean? Go home, go back. It just didn't, I never quite understood it. I never quite knew how to navigate it. So I just sort of tried to make do and, shove it aside, not think about it. And it was only, as I say, that's where I found my escape into my imagination. And then when it came back, it just came back with a vengeance, because it was coming back in the form of criticism of my performances and criticism of, I remember I had the worst review I've ever had in my life. I played Romeo, and it was such an awful review and very, very personal. I remember it said apparently this kid went to RADA. Why did they let him in, and why did they let him out? And it was awful, and it was so bad that my director at the time phoned up the local newspaper and said, what the hell is going on there? And they apologized and said, their normal reviewer wasn't available, so they'd sent some third, somebody else. And they said, that he obviously wasn't, had just went too far. But it was too late. It was already been printed. It was already online. And it was just crushing for me. It was crushing that I was being so dismissed. And so, particularly having had some success at RADA and really looking forward to what I was going to do in my career, it just crushed me. And that's when I started to, as I say, these things started to come back up again.
I appreciate that this is not easy stuff to talk about, and I'm appreciative that you're, willing to talk about this today and share these stories, because it's so massively important. And
I will say though that, and I'm really glad that I'm speaking to you, and I'm really glad that your website, your podcast is so much about mental health. If it wasn't, I think I'd be in trouble today, because I'm exhausted, and I've come back from 9 months of work. I've gone straight into this book. I did Soccer Aid at the weekend. I'm exhausted, and my alarm bells are starting to go now. And I said to everybody this morning, it might be time just to close the door a little bit on this, because it is exhausting and it is a lot to talk about. And even though I found this whole experience empowering, I want to close the box just for, I want to become an actor again. I want to go back into my acting, and I start acting tomorrow. I haven't even read the script. I've been so busy. I haven't even read the script, and this afternoon I'm going to go in the garden and get my head back into acting mode. And because, as you said, this stuff is tough.
It is, and you've got to have boundaries. And I'm sure that's something that you've realised over the years, that those boundaries have to be in place so that you take care of your mental health, and that if there are conversations that pull you back, or even when you're having to witness racism elsewhere play out, which we've unfortunately had to see in horrific and in in really public ways in the last 6 months with, you know, brilliant footballers getting abuse and all sorts of things, that you need to have boundaries in place to ensure that you stay on track with your mental health. It's of huge importance. So it's a tricky balance, isn't it? Because you know, when we talk about mental health, it's going to help people and it's a beautiful thing and it's connective and it's amazing. But if you're not feeling great, you're no use to anyone. So it's just getting that balance, and it's and that's why I'm deeply appreciative that you're up for having this chat today, because I know from my audience it will be deeply impactful and helpful. But equally, if there's bits that you don't want to cover today, you know, this is your space. This is your space entirely.
I find it sort of, it's like I was saying this to my therapist the other day, that it comes in a wave, like just then, and then it goes away, and I'm astonished at how much talking about my breakdowns, particularly psychosis, it never goes away. You know, that pain never goes away, and sometimes Twitter can be a great resource. And you know, I've recently been followed by a lot of mental health practitioners because I have been talking about, you know, psychosis particularly. And psychosis is the one that not a lot of people talk about, because it's the one where you get taken away, and it's the one where you lose your mind. It's the one it's the big scary one. And so they've all been delighted that someone like me, a strong black man like me, is talking about these sensitive and vulnerable issues, because it encourages others to say, well, if he can do it, then I can do it. And you know, I was contacted by somebody on Twitter the other day, and she was a mental health practitioner, and she just said, because I was saying how tired I said something on Twitter, and she said, it's trauma. You're dealing with something extremely traumatic, and it's not just your mental. It's not just the psychosis. It's also racism. So I'm like dealing with this double whammy of difficult issues, and that's why I've also got to be careful, because if I stray too far into the racism one, people don't like it. People don't like me talking about it. And I will look on my Twitter feed, and somebody with Union Jacks on, loads of Union Jacks on their avatar will be having a go. You know, and it's jarring, because they go, well, you're banging on about that shit again. And you just go,
well, it's not like you want to be. We would like to not have to have this conversation. We would like this we want to live in a place of harmony. You wouldn't have to if racism didn't exist. This is why you're having to put yourself in these uncomfortable positions, you know, and hats off again, you know, like that's why I'm again hugely grateful that you're willing to go there on these two deeply painful themes for you. And there's something in the book that I found seriously interesting, and I don't think that I've talked about it enough in this space. And we've talked a lot about post-traumatic stress disorder with many amazing guests, and also my own experience of it, which I still have therapy with, because I still have panic attacks in certain situations, and some that are super annoying, like that affect the work that I'm doing. I still can't cross that threshold yet. But what I haven't concentrated enough on yet is post-traumatic growth. And that's something that I am fascinated about, and I probably hadn't recognized my own enough. And I would love to hear more about what shape that has taken for you and what that growth looks like.
I guess, you know, I talked about opening that envelope and then being terrified when the first thing I saw, it's really disturbing, but as it says in the book, you know, is apparently I was saying to the doctors, I've merged hearts with a young black boy. Merged hearts with a young. I was like, what? And I found it really disturbing that was the first thing I saw, and that's what made me close the envelope. But actually, when I think about it, I had got so lost during my psychoses, and you know, I'm a Brummy lad, and you know, straight up, no nonsense. But I sort of, you know, you pile on these different beliefs and different ideas at drama school, and then I'd sort of gone away from the boy that I was, and sort of gone away from my sort of core self, and I think that's part of why I got so lost. And I did spend 5 days in the hospital, literally not knowing who I was. And then sort of sat up one morning and kind of got back to myself. But I do sort of feel as though psychically, in this period of loss, I was just trying to get back to myself, my core self, and sort of bond with it and sort of remake that connection. So this whole process for me of opening that envelope and what I even do in the documentary was like getting back in touch with all that pain, all that trauma that really dislodged me and really nearly ruined me. But I think I buried it. I buried it hoping I'd never find it again and just pretended I was fine. And I think that's what people tend to do when it comes to mental, or can do when it comes to mental health. They think, I'm going to bury this. I'm struggling, but I'm going to fight through it. I'm going to get on. I don't need any help, particularly with psychosis. I don't need any help. I'm going to get on with it. My dad was like that. My dad had his breakdown, and then when he was better, refused to take his tablets and was never the same again. Was never the same man again. And my parents got divorced. And my mom was speaking about it this morning. He was a different man. And as far as he was concerned, he was fine. But everybody else was like, you're not the same guy we knew for 30, 15, 20 years. So I think, in a way, I was sort of not quite myself, in the early part of my career, I'd say right up until the documentary, even when I was successful in Hollywood, I was sort of like, okay, now I'm down a red carpet in Hollywood, and something's missing. Something's still not quite right. Something's still, even though I've got success and suddenly got money, something's not right. And doing this documentary, getting in touch with all that pain, all that trauma, acknowledging it, sitting with it. Again, it's what my therapist says, sitting with your darkest moments, rather than getting pissed or getting stoned to distract yourself from it. Sit with your lonely self, sit with it. And I've sort of tried to do that. And in this last year, previous years, I have hit the bottle and I have thought, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. But this year I really decided to sit with it and really sit with those darker moments, open that envelope, read it cover to cover. There is nothing in the cupboard that I haven't now had a look at. And having done that and faced it and owned it, I feel great. Yeah. I feel like there's nothing now that I don't know about myself. And it's really funny, I bought a new Hoover I ordered a new Hoover on Sunday, and I really wanted to use it. So this morning I said to the wife, I said, I'm hoovering the bed. I just want to hoover the bedroom. So I'm hoovering, and I got so much joy. The old Hoover was rubbish, and I said to the wife, this Hoover's crap, and she went, yeah, you never hoover the house, so how would you know? So first thing I did, got on the internet, ordered a new Hoover, and then I'm hoovering. I'm thinking, this is great. This is better.
Yeah.
You just kind of go, I want to be home to enjoy all the growth, all the money that, I'm not saying money that I've earned, but the success that I've had means nothing if I can't enjoy it at home, with my kids. That means cooking a meal. That means hoovering the bedroom.
Yeah.
It's just the simple things. And I got so much joy from just hoovering the bedroom.
Yeah.
And so for me, that growth for me is, years ago, I would have got that joy from going into town and running into the Groucho and getting pissed, and I don't. Now I'm like, I want to go home. I don't necessarily want to hang in the Groucho, hang in town, and bump into friends. I want to go home and to the telly and play with the dog and sit in the garden. And I very nearly started to watch Garden's World because I'm like in the garden weeding and just enjoying it. And that for me is a huge sign of my personal growth. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't have sat with those darker moments. I would still be trying to cover them up. So that's where I'd say that growth.
Well, you've come home in a literal sense, and also within yourself. You've come home, and whilst you were talking there, it really made me think, you know, looking at the book title and feeling the impact of that, maybe I don't belong here, and knowing that inherently all any of us want is to feel like we belong. That is what every day we get up, and on a subconscious, like a subterranean level, we just want to feel like we belong. And our actions will differ in how we'll feel like that. We might try and buy an outfit to feel like we look cool and fit in on a very base level, but the behavior will vary in extremities. And I guess until you do the deep work and look at, as you say, like you've looked at everything now, I'm in that process of trying to pick through my past and look at everything. That's perhaps when you can feel a sense of belonging just with yourself. You don't need anybody else. Obviously, community is always wonderful. Obviously, having people you connect with, people that accept you and understand you for who you are, is beautiful. But if we can derive that sense of belonging from within, that's another level of peace.
Absolutely. I couldn't put it better myself, you know. And it's not easy. You know, you've got to do the hard work. You really have to do the hard work. And as I say, this journey has seen me bawling with complete strangers on the street. You know, people. I had no idea my documentary was going to affect people the way it did. And you know, the morning after it went out, I didn't watch it. I was terrified. When it was on the TV, I was terrified, and really panicking, thinking I'd really shot myself in the foot here, ruined my career. But the next morning, I took the dog for a walk. Just people were just, excuse me, Mr. And normally there's a bit of a barrier between, you know, the actor and me, and I can kind of hide behind that. But that was gone.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Excuse me, Mr. Harewood, just want to say thank you so much for." And I couldn't go more than 10 feet without somebody else was coming up to me. Somebody else was coming up to me. It happened to my dad. It happened to my mom. It happened to and it was very uncomfortable because I was very raw, and I was sobbing on the street with total strangers because they were suddenly going, "I've never spoken about this before. You know, my dad this and my dad that happened there." Taxi drivers would go, "Oh, I saw your program last week. Yeah, it happened to my son." And you find yourself in the middle of a really in-depth personal conversation with people who've had this awful experience. It is an awful experience, watching a loved one, whether it's a husband or dad or son, daughter, go through a psychotic break. I mean, it's like they turn into somebody else and you think that you've lost them. And it's very painful. So it really hasn't been an easy journey. But now when they come up, I listen to them and I kind of offer a bit of advice. And now I'm in a place of strength. It's not sort of reducing me to tears all the time, but it's, you know, and just on Saturday night, some guy, again, messaged me on Twitter and said, "You know, I'm a black actor. Same thing happened to me. I had a breakdown. I don't suppose you mind." Yeah, talk. Absolutely. Get on the phone. And it's just nice to share with somebody. And, you know, he's really kind of, wow, you know, somebody's talking about this. And another guy at Soccer Aid come up to me and go, "I had a breakdown, and saw your documentary, and brilliant documentary, and talking, and I'm going to meet him on Thursday and have in town and sit down because he wants to talk more about his break because he's never talked about it before." And so I found that even though it's been tough and awful and difficult and it's had me sobbing, that I'm now in a place where I can sort of offer people, you know, a helping hand or even a shoulder, or you know, get them to laugh at it, or you know, some of the crazy things that we do when we were you know, experiencing a breakdown. And it seems to have been tremendously helpful. And I even though it's been tough, I really wouldn't have changed anything. It's probably been the most important thing I've ever done.
How's it changed how you view your own father? Because even when we're adults, we still see our parents as you know, we don't see them necessarily as humans. They're parents, and they, you know, and we listen to them or we don't listen to them, we rebel against them or whatever. And I still, at the age of 40, will look at my parents and go, oh my God, they're humans. You know, they've been through stuff and they're reacting from a place of pain sometimes, etc. Has it given you a new perspective in which to look at your own dad?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, unfortunately, you know, just shortly after the breakdown, his breakdown, I moved away to drama school, you know, and so I lost touch with him. I lost touch with him, you know, just physical and, you know, physically just lost touch with him. And, you know, as I said, he didn't take his tablets and continued drinking heavily. And towards the end of his life, well, the mid, you know, when I did sort of check in with him, he was just very distant and very a difficult man to talk to. And I think I invited him down here one to, well, not this house, to another house that I was living in. And it was just a bizarre sort of evening, you know, where he was walking around at 3 o'clock in the morning and opening cupboards at 3 o'clock in the morning and, you know, drinking. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, I've got to watch my dad. And it was a really uncomfortable night because I had to try talking to try and get him to sleep. And then I think that, you know, prior to that, I thought, what was it just after that? My sister said, oh, he's acting odd, he's acting odd, maybe something's going on. He seems like he's drunk all the time. So I went up to see him, and actually, kind of, again, socially, I took him for a drink, and I bought him a drink and put the drink down, and he said, thanks for the drink, mate. What's your name again? And I went, what? He said, I just want to know who's brought me a drink. I said, I'm David. And he went, cheers, Dave. Oh, fuck. You know who I am. And that's when I said, this is more than alcohol. And that's when the dementia starts to kick in. And maybe I didn't, you know, I was too busy to, and I was back off to the States. And, you know, I don't think any of us handled that particularly well, because he was in and out of periods of lucidity. And by the time I came back again, he was properly sort of gone, and it was, you know, in care. Little flickers of him there, you know, every now and again. But when I wrote this book, I suddenly thought, he's had a tough life. You know, he came here with high hopes of succeeding and high hopes of, you know, England for a lot of the Caribbean was the mother country. It was this land of milk and honey. It was go to England and find yourself as a man. And, you know, think of that generation now and how they've been treated by the government with the Windrush generation, how some of them have been deported, and it's just awful. It's awful. You know, even my mom, you know, I've got great respect for her. That whole culture, that whole generation, been battered, just been battered. So it has sort of made me, and that's why I wrote him. I could have wrote the foreword to him, because I never really got a chance to say, oh, you're a champion, man. You're a real champion. You came here, you know, with just the clothes on your back, and you worked really hard, got a great job. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have got the money to go to drama school. I wouldn't have been able to go to drama school. You know, I suddenly thought, you know, he was the guy who watched all those programs that inspired me to be an actor. He was the guy who watched all those programs that inspired me to laugh and to enjoy performance. Tommy Cooper, and it was only my dad. It was my dad's. We're watching this, not that. And so I just sat and watched whatever he watched, and I grew up laughing. And I guess that's where my sense of humor comes from. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have that. So yes, completely, even though I sort of went away from him, the book has made me think, you know, you're a strong man. And you know, unfortunately, the world sort of was very tough on you and very tough on him. and maybe I didn't give him the respect in time, because my career was in America. But I hope the book is makes up for it in some little way. And certainly now, I think of him extremely fondly.
No, without a doubt, the book is, as you said at the start of this, a real love letter to him, and I think as we get older, it's so interesting, and also almost a necessity that you look back and you look at the threads of, I've done it with my own family, or my mum's side, the maternal lineage. There's a history of poor mental health and breakdowns, etc. And I want to learn more about it now, and I didn't when I was younger. I was doing other things, so I think there's a time in your life where that feels like you can't avoid it. You have to dive in and look at it. And let's talk about your mum, because I got this really strong sense of her unbelievable maternal intuition. Like, she knew exactly how to take care of you and how to help with your recovery. And that seemed like a pivotal point in your life, that you'd moved back to Birmingham, you were with your mum, she was taking care of you, you were allowed bits of freedom, but then she knew when things weren't quite right. And she was the person who intuitively weaned you off your medication, and you've not been on medication since, or had an episode, which is incredible.
Well, I think there's 15% of people who have psychosis or a psychotic breakdown who never need further medication, never have any further problems. And I just happen to slot into that bracket, luckily. Thank the Lord. Not everyone is. Lots of people still on medication, still taking those antipsychotics, which were awful. And I was over medicated. So again, that plays into the whole the racism and race fear of the large black man. That plays into that. But I certainly think that my mom, with zero mental health teaching or awareness, just loved her son. And she could see that. And I was, when I was taking these tablets, I mean, they were awful. And like that, just slow. I was massively overweight, and I was just told to keep taking the tablets. That's it. No follow up. Just keep taking the tablets. And they really started to depress me. And I was frustrated that I couldn't get my sharpness back. I didn't have my wit. I didn't have I wasn't sharp. And so, yeah, she phoned up the hospital and said, what's happening? Oh, yeah, just stop taking them. And I went from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour, and very nearly had another sort of break. But she just, again, without any teaching or learning, just gave me a tablet every other day, and half a tablet every other day, and a bite of a tablet, just with her own knowledge, just weaned me off them until eventually I was fine and balanced. I mean, the brain, Fearne, is such a delicate instrument. It is such a delicate instrument. And occasionally they misfire. Everyone thinks we're all supposed to be perfect. We're all supposed to be great. That's not the case. And occasionally one or two of us, or many of us, sort of just need a bit of a service, or maybe need some time out. And it's such a shame that we don't appreciate just how special this thing is up here.
I know. We bombard it with shit, which blows my mind, is that this is, as you've just said, the greatest tool we have. We have this exceptional thing in our skulls that allow us to be creative, to communicate, to invent,
Reason, to
imagine. Yeah. And there we are on our phones, imbibing ungoverned amounts of bullshit. Some of it useful, yes. Probably 90% just polluting. And I was thinking about this morning, like, how choosy should I be? Very choosy is the answer. I need to be so choosy with what I read, what I'm looking at online, the people that I'm talking to and what I'm listening to. And because we've got screens bloody everywhere, you have to be so disciplined and so on it to go, I'm going to treat this brain like the most amazing piece of machinery and only feed it the best stuff, because we have normalized feeding it all day with crap.
Absolutely.
Terrified. No wonder we have such huge levels of mental health problems. I know it's not all that, but that is for a lot of people, especially young people now with phones on their palms constantly. It contributes to so much of the toxicity and the problems that are playing out mentally.
Absolutely. You know, and I partnered with the book with Black Minds Matter, and they're a wonderful young organization of mainly young people, and it's wonderful that they're discussing mental health in the Black community, because it's kind of taboo in the Black community. And you know, when I've started, it's amazing to see how me speaking about it, not saying me speaking about it, but being so public about it, has really started to change that. And you know, I'll be in Tesco's, and one of the most wonderful things that happened to me just after the documentary. I was in Tesco's, and this really old Black lady, grey hair, she kind of spotted me across the frozen veg, and she just kind of came over to me. She just kind of went, "Well done," and it kind of made me choke up a little bit. But she just went, and then walked off with a big smile on her face. And I just thought, yes, that's the affirmation we need. But as you say, the opposite of that. Can you imagine growing up as a kid now? What are you wearing? What's cool? What isn't cool? What's your hairstyle? What are you listening to? You know, how many TikTok followers have you got? How many Instagram followers have you got? It's just a minefield of you're being bombarded, as you say, with shit. And you know, it's a very difficult space for children to navigate. You know, we didn't deny my kids, you know, the grams and the tweets, but I said, you know, make them private so that you know who's following you know who's liking your stuff, and you don't search for likes. If you're out there going, anybody can follow me, and anybody can send me a message, I said that's a very different world that you're in then, trying to get likes, trying to battle with likes, and you know, who's watching your videos, and just explain to them that trying to talk to them about those things, and it seems to be working. They have a very healthy relationship with social media. But sometimes I say, well, just delete it. I said, you know, that's what I do. You know, if I'm having a bad day, or if you know, if I'm getting grief from something, you know, I do a lot of documentaries, and some of the documentaries I do are about race, you know, about whether it's COVID or in the education system. And even though it's just bare facts, even though I'm stating facts, you still get the Union Jack, the avatar bot going, "You're talking bollocks, you're black," you know, and it's I don't want to see that at 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it on my phone. So I'll just delete Twitter. And it's so refreshing. It's gone. It's gone. And I'm not looking for it. And then about 4 or 5 days later, I'll go, well, what's the football scores? And I'll just download it again.
Yeah.
But it's so refreshing to just delete it off your phone.
We have the agency to do that, and we forget it.
Yeah. I do it all the time. Just delete it. And then and I was on holiday one time, and after I deleted it, I was looking, and everyone's like that.
Yeah, I know.
Around the pool, and you just look around and go, "Fucking look at them."
Yeah, we're all addicted, aren't we? It's very easy to get addicted to, but we are, if we admit it, probably on some level addicted. And again, we have to create our own boundaries of that and what works for us. We don't have to know what Kim Kardashian ate for lunch. We don't have to know everything. You know, we there needs to be stuff that we're still willing to learn about, and in our own time. It doesn't have to be like we know everything about everything because we're looking at our phone the whole time. I'm up for learning stuff. I'm up for there being patches of my knowledge that are just non-existent because I've got time. I want to learn stuff, and you know what? Talking about that, you know, this is why I like doing this podcast. I don't like it. I love doing this podcast because, especially over the last year, you know, sort of connecting with people during the pandemic and at such a strange time, I've learned more this year about humans than I think in my whole lifetime. And the subjects that we've covered, from, you know, all aspects of mental health, from anxiety to compulsive gambling, to talking about race, you know, so many things. And I don't want to present this podcast acting like I know all of it, because I don't. I know my experience, but I don't know. There's so many holes in my knowledge that I'm willing to learn about and that I want to learn about. And psychosis was definitely one of them. I had a very rudimentary understanding of what it meant. And I know that one of the things you're passionate about is breaking down the stigma that surrounds it, because it's still so synonymous with words like lunatic or mad, crazy, and things that are deeply unhelpful. My understanding was just basic. I just knew that there was some sort of cognitive malfunction, but the bit that I had no understanding of at all, that I was ignorant to, was the thing that you talked about very briefly earlier, this sort of energy and the fire that you felt, and at times the euphoria that you felt, and really the sort of complexities of how your past traumas or the things you're trying to process are playing out. They're not going to be the stereotypical idea we have of what psychosis means. I've learned so much from reading your book and watching your documentary. So again, thank you for that.
You know, I'm glad you said that. I remember about a week after it went out, I did some event somewhere, and I was riding home on the tube, and this old guy came up to me and went, "Absolutely marvelous documentary, absolutely fantastic. I just want to say, I'm a therapist. No one talks about psychosis. No one talks about. That's the one that no one talks about. Thank you so much." And it's almost as if he was delighted, because it is the one no one talks about.
Yeah.
It's one, you know, even Bipolar's got a bit sexy with Homeland, you know, with the highs and the lows, you know, and I think, you know, Ryan Reynolds has talked about anxiety, and so a lot of the depression has obviously become sort of very, very common. No one talks about losing your mind, and it is one of the most extraordinary conditions. It really is an extraordinary condition, where you're literally hearing voices and seeing things. And I mean, the hallucinations and delusions part of it, I still to this day would say it was one of the most extraordinary things that's ever happened to me. Now, hearing Martin Luther King's voice in my head, like he's speaking to me, literally like he's whispering in my ear. I'm like, it was extraordinary. And the power of that, I think it's almost, in some ways, it's kind of fed into my acting. It has fed into that's why I sort of, there are more things in heaven and earth, the ratio. It's like, there's just so much out there. And as an actor now, and even more than before, but I have no fear. I just have zero fear. It's like Saturday, Soccer Aid, walking in front of, doing a speech in front of 50,000 people. They were all going, "You okay? You okay?" I was like, "Yep, absolutely." Just like, it's just no fear whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
It's just like having hearing, I know how extraordinary things can be. And this feels to me, doing that was it's a job.
Yeah.
So and acting's a job. And, I know how far, it's almost like I know how I've taken it right to the edge and gone over the edge. So anything short of that is absolutely fine by me.
Wow.
I'm sort of fearless in that, but meeting some of those younger people in that documentary is just tremendous, and understanding how they still remain kids. They still laugh, they still play, but they battle it all the time. So the one girl, she was taking anything up to 17 tablets a day to balance out her mind and balance out her sort of chemical imbalance. That's how it's an imbalance.
Yeah.
And I said, "What happens if you?" I said, "What happens if you don't take them? She says, oh, I can feel it. She says, I might start getting a bit more aggressive, or I might start getting, I might start, playing up a little bit, speaking loudly. I might start talking faster. She says, I notice it now. Before she didn't notice it before. So now when she notices, she goes, oh, I need to take that tablet. So she'll take that and she'll feel better. And that's extraordinary that you can have. I know I was wrecked because I was presenting this show, dealing with my own memory of my own breakdown, doing Soccer Aid again. I was exhausted. And actually, when I got to the interviewer that day, I had to sit in the car that is going almost. I was crying my eyes out in the car. I was thinking, I've got to get my shit together and go and do this interview and be my professional BBC best. And just by talking to her, I forgot all I was like, she was so mesmerizingly authentic and real. I forgot all my problems. And I was like, my God, I'm amazed at you. Amazed at her. And she was beautiful, just beautiful. And I just thought, wow, she's one extraordinary girl. She was an extraordinary girl. And I'm so disappointed at the pandemic, we got nominated in the pandemic, because I would love to have taken her to the BAFTAs. I'd love to have taken 3 of them to the BAFTAs. Can you imagine?
That would have been so special.
Them out in a dress, fitting them out in a tux.
Yeah.
Going, come on, let's go to the BAFTAs.
But how beautiful that you've got that connection. And I think this is a theme that we've explored so much on this podcast, that the things that we assume are the bits that alienate us, the pain, the suffering, the trauma, that's the stuff that glues you to other people. That's the connectivity. We fear it's going to push us away from other people, but look at these beautiful relationships for you that have been forged. I've certainly had that over the last, 5 years that I've been exploring this theme publicly. It's gorgeous.
It really is. You say you reach out and you go, oh, yeah, I'll help. Let me give you a hand. And it is, as you say, sobbing on the street with complete strangers, and then you go, have a great day, mate, and you're off. You sort of step in your step, and you just feel great. And it's as you say, it's a shame that we sort of that in our we think we have to deal with it ourselves.
Yes.
And that's when we load ourselves with more stress. We drink more, we take more pills, we distract more, rather than just letting it all out, blubbing your eyes out. And, maybe sometimes you do need help. Sometimes you do need to reach out and say, I'm not doing so well here. Can you give us a hand? Or, what's the best thing to do here? And that's really, really important that you don't deal with it yourself. Try and deal with it.
It takes courage, but it's the biggest first step you can take is talking to someone that you trust. Doesn't have to be a professional, can just be someone that you love, that is going to hear you. It's the best thing you can do. Oh, what an amazing opportunity to talk to you, David.
I will say that men, we're all supposed to be strong, big, and especially black. And the amount of guys who come up to me and said, wow, man, well done, well done. Because you saying that makes me feel like, I don't have to match up to this image of the big strong dude. Every now and again, things get tough. You can get on top of you. So, and I just try and encourage them to get in touch with that softer side and that more sensitive side. You don't always have, especially they're young men, you don't always have to be the tough dude. And, it's important that you reach out sometimes.
Oh, I have so loved this conversation. I'm so grateful. I feel quite emotional about it. God, honestly, I just loved talking to you, and thank you for the incredible work that you're doing. And again, for talking about this, this stuff that's tough within Happy Places. I'm deeply grateful. So thank you so much.
As I said to you, I'm just delighted it was you today, because I would have been in trouble, I think, any other place, because I'm not, you know, the alarm bells are going.
Yeah.
And I'm just so thankful that it was you, and I'm so thankful that it was this space, because actually now I feel so much better, and it's put me in a happy place.